5 Live Formula One.
Hello and welcome to the Marina Bay Street Circuit here in Singapore. The local time here is just after 5:25 in the afternoon, but let me tell you, the day is not cooling down one bit. It is still 30 degrees, it is very hot and humid, and it is nearly time for FP3. I'm Rosanna Tennant down here in the pit lane, and as you can hear, the engines are firing up ahead of the third and final practice session. The final chance for the teams and drivers to perfect their setup as we head ever closer to qualifying to set the grid for tomorrow's Singapore Grand Prix. I'm down here in the very hot pit lane in a cooler commentary box. Our lead commentator Harry Benjamin is alongside Sam Bird. A very good morning, afternoon, wherever you're listening to us around the world. Harry, yesterday was an interesting one, wasn't it? We had Charles Leclerc topping the timesheets in FP1, and then it was Lando Norris in FP2 who set the timesheets alight. So what did you take away from the running on Friday?
Not much, Rosanna, I'll be honest with you, not much. I think it was really tricky to get a proper gauge on what was happening. FP1 is a little bit of an unrepresentative session because the track is so green, it's in the daytime as well, temperatures are so different. Going into FP2 though, once the lights came on, the sunset, much better idea. It certainly looks like we've got a bit of a fight on between McLaren and Ferrari. It feels nip and tuck at the moment there. Red Bull seem to be struggling as we predicted. But outside of that, we were even looking at the long runs yesterday and everyone running different tyres. So it's hard to get a proper gauge of what's actually happening. FP3 will prove much more crucial going into qualifying later.
Yeah, it was a very interesting day. It's great to have you in the commentary box, Sam, Formula E driver Sam Bird. I was having a chat with Abby Pulling, who's been driving in the F1 Academy this weekend, winning the first race just a little earlier on. And we had huge thunderstorms here last night, rain like you have never seen. And she was telling me that it has changed the track characteristics entirely. It's more like FP1 again. But with the F1 cars, I guess the grip's going to be laid down pretty quickly. But how will the drivers be approaching this third session, given the change in conditions?
Firstly, good afternoon, everybody. It is tricky. With the rain, it washes away the cleaner area of the circuit. Now, F1 cars will put the rubber down quite quickly again, but it will be, as you said, a little bit like FP1 at the beginning. They've got an hour now to sort themselves out and get the balance correct for qualifying and the race. So I expect the cars to be out there pretty quickly and doing quite a few laps.
Yeah, I hope so. That's what we're expecting. We're hoping for lots of action. I'm down in the pit lane looking across the start-finish straight, and the fans are sitting there in the grandstands. It's not a very representative session, but they're sticking it out because, of course, it'll get just a little bit cooler later on, which makes perhaps the enjoyment of watching the F1 cars here in Singapore a little higher. I'm just watching the final preparations being done and made by the Mercedes team as well. I'm outside Lewis Hamilton and George Russell's garages. Difficult day for them yesterday. They seem a little bit lost, don't they, Harry?
Yeah, they do. Experimenting with different setups throughout the course of Friday, and there's even work going on right now on the front wing of Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes, and a bit of a disaster end for George Russell, who found the wall in turn 8, just snatched a wheel and his front right wheel, and into the wall he went, managed to reverse it and get it back round into the pits, but that was a front wing bound for the bin on Friday evening. So definitely Mercedes with work to do. And you know what, they've got to look behind them a little bit as well, because there's a couple of teams in the midfield that are looking very quick, possibly some dark horses out there. Williams looking very quick, Alex Albon running a bit of an upgrade, Franco Colapinto as well, back for his only third Grand Prix, never raced around Singapore tracks either, also looking quick, and the RB team as well. They're snipping at the heels of Mercedes.
Both the Red Bull drivers just getting strapped in now. Sergio Perez just being strapped in by one of the mechanics, and Max Verstappen also going through the same processes. So it looks like the Red Bull guys want to get out nice and quickly. Sergio Perez yesterday saying that the car was all over the place, but Max Verstappen actually saying it wasn't the curbs that was the problem, it was just a general lack of grip. So they are obviously eager to get out there. We have still got a red light at the moment at the end of the pit lane, but I'm sure in just a few moments' time we'll get a green light, and hopefully the cars will spill out into the fast lane of the pit lane, and we'll get this FP3 session underway. Harry and Sam are going to talk us through it. I'll be down here doing all the hard work in the pit lane. Harry, over to you. FP3, let's do this.
Thank you very much, Rosanna Tennant. We will check back in with you throughout the course of FP3. But here we go then. Green light on at the end of the pit lane. Free practice 3 underway. The final practice session before we go qualifying later on today. Still bright out there. The sun hasn't quite set, so the lights aren't all illuminated, and we did have, as we said, a deluge of rain overnight, which has set the track back in terms of conditions, much greener. For those who wish to do a bit of a sync up, it's 59 minutes and 31, 30, 29 seconds remain, and there is not a huge flurry of cars out on track at the moment. Let's just bring you up to speed, first of all, with how the standings are in terms of teams and drivers. In the constructors, McLaren now lead the way, having taken the lead from Red Bull after Baku. They lead by 20 points. Then come Red Bull, and you know what? It's a three-way battle for the Constructors' Championship, because Ferrari are not too far behind either. Mercedes and Aston Martin a little bit in no man's land. Then it's a really tight battle to watch out for in the midfield between RB, Haas, Williams and Alpine. All nip and tuck at the moment, with Sauber adrift down in 10th and last, still with no points to their name. And over in the Drivers' Championship, Max Verstappen still does have a sizable lead. 59 points the gap between himself and Lando Norris. Norris needs a strong weekend to take points off of Max Verstappen this weekend for Singapore Grand Prix on Sunday. Charles Leclerc is third, ahead of Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz, the top 5 in the drivers. But you know what, Sam, what I love about Formula One right now is that we're going into almost every weekend not really knowing what's going to happen.
It's just nice that we've got more cars fighting for the podium, fighting for race wins. You know, the last 2 seasons, let's face it, it's been the Max Verstappen show, and he's driven superbly and he's had the best car. And what was it last year? Was it 18 wins or something outrageous? This year, okay, they started strong, but McLaren have come on leaps and bounds. Ferrari in the mix as well. Mercedes have stolen a few wins. So it is really, really exciting. And that jeopardy that Red Bull are going through at the moment, can they rescue this World Championship that they look to have sewn up 5-6 races ago? Can they bounce back, or are McLaren going to steal this from under their noses?
Cars out on track. The 2 Aston Martins, Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, head out as our first 2 cars, both on the medium tyre. It's an interesting track, this as well. So much to get to grips with in terms of not only how a driver deals with this, but also the characteristics of this as a street circuit. We talk about how Baku last week was also a street circuit, but this very different. Can you explain why that is?
Well, Baku, you've got the longest straight in Formula One. I think it's 2.2 kilometers to start and end the lap, which makes DRS extremely effective. This one is a higher downforce circuit. The tyre temps will get a lot hotter here, especially the rears, so you need to conserve your rear tyres. And it's just got that even more of a street feel to it. I found it a very enjoyable circuit to drive and race on. I raced on it as we see a lizard on the circuit. Now, this is actually something, Harry, that we've seen quite a few times here. I think Max Verstappen said a few years ago that he saw Godzilla on the circuit, and I don't think we can consider this little chap Godzilla, but certainly, I hope he's all right. He's going to go onto the racing line.
I think are they monitor lizards? I think that's the local lizard in Singapore.
Yeah. But it is a very enjoyable circuit to do. It's very complex, a lot of corners on this track, so a lot of time to be gained or lost. Certainly it looks like the McLaren seems to have the edge in the slow speed corners, which there are a lot of here. A lot of slow speed and 90 degrees, a lot of change of direction. And yeah, Red Bull seem to be struggling around this circuit, which is actually not a surprise given their recent form.
No, not at all. And I mean, McLaren are the ones to beat, both in the Constructors' Championship and indeed over in terms of pace. In looking at their car performance, they really have improved. It's so interesting when you see. I mean, obviously you are McLaren's Formula E driver, but
so no bias
whatsoever.
No bias at all.
But in the Formula One world, you look back to just the beginning of last year. and they were last at the back.
I was in Bahrain at the beginning of 2023, and the mood in the camp was tough. They were really struggling. They had brakes that literally couldn't last the race at one point, and they were really struggling with grip and downforce, both in low speed and high speed, and they were last. They were literally last. Now, with the leadership of Zach and Andrea Stella, they've been able to transform that entire team and car to the point where now they are the quickest outright on most weekends, and that's testament to everybody that works there and the leadership of Andrea Stella and Zach Brown.
Absolutely, and how fortunes can change in Formula One. We see it year in, year out. Just saw a bit of a wry smile from Alex Albon in the Williams garage. He doesn't look like he's in a rush to get in his car, but he was watching the screens as we were again seeing the Lizard that is out on track, still out there, just making its way around. Only Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll are out on the track at the moment. Aston Martin continuing to try and find some way forward at the moment. They seem to be in a little bit of no man's land actually for Aston Martin, but I suppose off the back of their huge news last week securing Adrian Newey, their thoughts will all be on the future and what 2026 can bring. What a you talk about boost and the positivity with the team. A signing like Newey must be massive for everyone.
Yeah, going forwards, that is a huge signing, but I think that it will take time. Like, you can't expect him to just turn up and the car be quick. There are things that
snap his fingers and it's all better again.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the exciting thing won't be necessarily the beginning of next year. It'll be later developments within the year and then the following iteration of Aston Martin cars. So 2026 will be the year that they come to the fore.
Well, the grandstands are getting fuller and fuller despite the lack of track action, and indeed we will get more and more as the session ramps up. But I suppose there's not a huge rush to get out on the track, Sam, because the conditions aren't going to be really that useful for when we go qualifying. FP2, I suppose, yesterday under the lights was probably the most representative gauge as to where the running order will be. But how do the drivers prepare for a weekend like this? This was, of course, the first ever F1 night race that came onto the calendar. We saw, I think it was Joe Guan Yu yesterday. He went out in FP2, and straight away on his formation lap, he was saying, need to change my visor. This one's not working. What is that all about? Why is the visor here so important when you're under the lights?
Well, it's difficult. So I run with a Bell helmet, and they've come up with a specific visor for running in nighttime conditions. It looks a little bit like what we'd run in direct sunlight, that kind of Cara coat look, but far more see-through than the daytime one. It basically allows less glare, but the visibility like you were running in very, very dark conditions, very grey conditions, or the wet. So it's like a clear visor, but allows less glare into our eyes. They are really, really good things to use. What they will also do is turn down the lights on the dash. So you basically dim the lights.
Turn them down?
Turn down the brightness of everything on your dash, on your screen.
But that almost sounds... surely a night race,
so we are told the track is clear. Let's just have a look for the Lizard.
Oh, it's in the middle of the track.
Yeah, that was Alonso just coming into the pit lane. So the Lizard is in the middle of the track in the final, the second to last corner as you make your way through the left-hander of 18. The Lizard is wandering around Alonso there with eyes on it. Let's check in. And that has indeed actually done a red flag for the Lizard. So I'm sure the marshals, that'll be a new one. Won't be a new one for them to handle.
I just hope that the Lizard's okay. I hope he hasn't hit the wall. So
no, well, there's only been Alonso and Stroll out on track for the last 10 minutes. If you are just joining us, welcome to Free Practice 3. We do currently have a red flag for a Lizard, which is okay. It is moving. It's sauntering across the track, actually, right by the pit lane entry. And with you in the commentary box, by the way, is myself, Harry Benjamin, the McLaren Formula E driver, Sam Bird, and in the pit lane on Lizard Watch as well, Rosanna Tennant.
On local Lizard Watch. I love how you called it a local lizard.
Well, unless it's travelled far.
Yes, absolutely. It's great knowledge from you. Monitor Lizard. Paul poor little thing. It must be terrified. If you are an Aston Martin fan this evening here in Singapore, you are getting your money's worth, because it's almost like we're at their own private filming day. Lance Stroll and Aston Martin, and of course Fernando Alonso and the Aston Martin, just doing laps at the moment, scrubbing tyres. They're pretty renowned for this. They're putting a tyre through the heat cycle, but I'm not sure, does it really work, Sam? And why are they doing it? They're going to use them then in the race, and they've already had a lap on. Does that make it a bit easier to get the temperatures up straight away in the race?
Sorry, Rosanna, we're watching, I think the
lizard.
That is a quick-moving lizard.
The lizard's now in Q3 and he's going for it.
It's getting a cheer as well. It's getting a cheer.
The marshal's going to go down the inside. The lizard's offline. Sorry. Couldn't resist.
You can't help yourself, can you? Amphibians, reptiles, Formula One drivers.
I need to do something in the off-season, Rosanna, so just gearing up for that.
So, back to your question, Rosanna.
Do you want me to repeat it?
No, I do remember. I do remember
okay.
well. I think that they do this because they feel like it's not necessarily, it's tyre conditioning, but also if you go out of the pits in the race with that kind of, the tyre has got like a lacquered surface on the top of it, and you need to get through that lacquered surface before you can push, basically, and you need to protect the tyre in that very early phase, that early window. If you've got rid of that surface, then when they leave the pits in the race, it's better on that first lap. That initial first lap, they can push that little bit more than maybe the other people that need to protect that surface.
So they've actually they went out on mediums, both drivers. They came in, switched to hards, and actually the mechanics are working hard. They've been doing pit stops for the drivers, so they've actually been running it almost like they would do in a race. So then went on to hards, did a lap on those, and then came back in and went on to mediums again, some fresh ones. And as you say, Sam, that lacquered surface, it's super shiny. If I'm ever in doubt as to whether a driver's running an old or a used set of tyres, you can tell easily with the shiny surface. It's very visible to the eye. And now they've gone back into the garage, so it is quiet.
Yeah,
so no, it is not. We have an Alpine heading out. Here we go.
We've got cars on the circuit. So
and it's raining.
No, already.
I just had a few spots. Maybe just an isolated raindrop.
Message from race control as well, Rosanna. Lizard safe and secure. Cars now allowed out on tracks. I've never seen that message before, but well, there we go. Who'd have thought it? You still there, Rosanna? You still with us? Oh no, I think we've lost her. All right, we'll catch up with her later. Are you still there, Rosanna?
I'm there.
Oh, there you go.
I'm always there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Don't you worry. I was shouting. If I shout loud enough, you'll hear me. No, I think this is fabulous. All the cars now heading out. We're going to get some nice track activity, aren't we? And you'll be able to talk us through it.
One can only hope. Thank you, Rosanna. We'll check back in with you later. But indeed, now the Lizard is safe and sound. We may well get some more, but for now, the cars are back out on track. 47 minutes, 13, 12, 11 seconds remain of pre-practice 3 and out of the pits. The two Aston Martins, the Alpines of Gasly and Ocon, the Saubers of Zhou and Bottas, and the two Ferraris of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, along with Yuki Tsunoda in the RB. We talk a lot, Sam, about McLaren and how well they're doing, and 20 points now clear of Red Bull. But you know what? Ferrari are in the hunt for this as well. They're only they're only 31 points back, our Ferrari, which is very much doable. This is a 3-horse race for the Constructors' title.
It is now, yeah. And who would have thought that 7 or 8 races ago? We thought that it was Red Bulls and everybody else would be fighting for second. But the way that McLaren and Ferrari have clawed it back, I think that they've been intelligent with the way that they brought upgrades. Clearly their upgrades have worked and they've been able to find some form. I also think that the last few Grand Prix have really suited Ferrari, probably more so than McLaren, but McLaren is a car that works everywhere. I'm still unsure whether the Ferrari, you can really say the same thing about Ferrari. You look at struggles at the likes of Silverstone. McLaren worked at Silverstone, Ferrari didn't. When we go to other places later on in the season, will that Ferrari be as strong as it is right now?
Yeah, well, you know what? They have brought a little bit of an upgrade this weekend at Ferrari. A new front wing with some new elements on that. A performance upgrade. Always a little bit strange to see a performance upgrade being brought at a track like Singapore. They're not the only ones, though, either. Alpine have brought a new rear wing. Williams, on Alex Albon's car, have a new part of their front suspension that they're trialling out, while the likes of Red Bull with a circuit-specific upgrade to their front corner of the car, a beam wing for McLaren, and another circuit-specific front wing for the RB team. So that's the declared list of upgrades, at least. We can't always see them all. Sauber and Haas not declaring anything, along with Mercedes, who are also still having their issues. But I suppose the other thing with Ferrari is they brought in an upgrade earlier in the year. It was a downgrade. It introduced more bouncing onto the car. They feel like they've rectified that, but they still need some more tracks to really fully understand it they have. And while you've got that long straight in Baku, which I think gave them a little bit of confidence to see how that was performing around a street like this, where it's bumpy naturally, you don't have huge long straights, you are going through slow speed corners, still need a bit more time to tell. So it'll be interesting to see where they perform in the likes of Austin, Mexico, where they haven't always gone particularly well. But it was Charles Leclerc fastest in yesterday's FP1 session. Indeed, Leclerc and Sainz were first and third in FP1 and second and third in FP2. So they are up there and challenging Lando Norris and McLaren at the moment. Oscar Piastri was a little bit delayed out of FP1 yesterday, but did get up and running too. We talk about Mercedes and their struggles as well. They've got a slightly twigged livery celebrating one of their sponsors. They've got a tinge of green on them this weekend. And down in the pit lane with some more news on Mercedes is Rosanna.
Yeah, it was interesting yesterday with how Mercedes went. Both drivers struggling. You mentioned it earlier, Harry. George Russell's FP2 session finishing in the wall, but they were running different setups across the cars in FP1 yesterday, and then they realised actually they needed to converge slightly, so they did that in FP2, but both drivers still not happy. So a lot of work going on. We've seen actually on social media the team and Frederick Vesti, their reserve driver, of course, of F2 fame, in the sim last night. He posted a picture at 10 to 1 UK time, and you'd think he'd be talking to the guys here in Singapore, so that's about 8 o'clock in the morning here. So the hard work continued long after the checkered flag had flown for FP2, with Mercedes, I think, with a lot of head scratching going on, because it's just weird, isn't it? We come to some racetracks and they're super comfortable from the off and it all goes well, and then some weekends they're just totally lost. And I mean, yesterday they were coming in, making some front wing changes as you'd expect, but it just seemed that they couldn't dial it in at all. Both drivers as well.
This is the strange thing, Rosanna, about Mercedes and their form. I don't think that they can really say hand on heart they understand their race car, and I don't think they've been able to say that for the best part of 3 years. They can turn up somewhere and be really quick, or they can show
very
moments
bad instability
on radio.
on the turn-ins.
Okay, copy that, understood.
At the moment, very bad instability on the turn-ins. That's just Esteban Ocon on the radio in his Alpine. So Alpine, well, they are also another team that is struggling, but they're a little bit further back than Mercedes.
Yeah, so Mercedes, I don't feel like they understand their car. They can show up and be quick. Then the next weekend you think, they found a bit of form. Their upgrades have worked and they understand their car. And then they're lost again. It's really, really strange. They've even had weekends, Harry, where they've shown no pace, and then out of nowhere they get a result with some decent pace. So I'm yet to understand where Mercedes are at with their race car. It's clearly an improvement from previous years, but I still don't feel like I understand where they're at with their pace.
Well, do you know what, Sam? It's weird, because yesterday George was saying that actually the car didn't feel as well connected as it did 12 months ago and in recent races. Okay, fine, but it's weird then, isn't it, that they've almost taken a step back to even last year's spec, and I don't mean that in terms of the chassis and the way the car's designed now, but it's not behaving as they want it to, and yet they've had 3 wins this year. I mean, it's really, really strange times for Mercedes, and they're going to hope they can get on top of it with the help of the sim and Frederick Vesti back at base and the engineers here, all pulling together to try and heave themselves into Q3, which Lewis Hamilton said yesterday, at the moment, I won't be going into Q3. Well, from his results yesterday, you'd probably say, yeah, I kind of agree, Lewis, P12 and P11 in FP1 and FP2 respectively, but that's not okay.
So already feels better than yesterday.
Balance already feels better than yesterday. That's Oscar Piastri on the radio, and well, certainly going better than the Mercedes too. But Rosanna, back to you just to finish your point. The Mercedes are, I think, I don't want to say lost again, because I was saying that at the start of the year, but it feels like just as soon as they make a breakthrough, then suddenly they're nowhere. George Russell, though, was very negative about Pirelli and the tyres after Baku. That's something to bear in mind. A lot of this comes down to their tyre setup and their tyre warm-up.
Certainly does. I think a lot of people know that the tyres are tricky, but you've got to work around that, haven't you? You've got to find a car that's benign and suits all circuits. I think that's what McLaren have done, and it's good to hear Oscar Piastri feeling a bit more confident today with his balance, because yesterday he said it was pretty tricky. As you said, they struggled to get him out at the beginning of FP1 because they'd done a practice pit stop and a wheel got stuck on, or a tyre got stuck on. So he was man of the moment, everyone gathering around to see our latest race winner, and he couldn't even get out of the garage yesterday, so he was doing better than Friday.
One of the most important elements, Rosanna, of the car is the tyre, so understanding that is key. And you're right, Mercedes have been struggling with that. Also remember, their philosophy 2 years ago was very, very different to everybody else's. They went on a completely different direction with their aerodynamics. They've then converged with everybody else for this year. So they've kind of been on the back foot a little bit, and I think that their understanding on the current regulations with where the car needs to be.
Just in the way, the whole lap.
Verstappen radio.
Car's much better though.
That's Verstappen just saying everyone's in the way. The car is much better though, so we'll come on to traffic management being an issue throughout the weekend, but so slightly positive signs from Verstappen. Sam.
Yeah, well, basically I was just saying that Mercedes, I keep on being interrupted here, Mercedes' philosophy has changed, and I think that they're still probably going through some small teething issues with regards to understanding their vehicle.
Right, 39 minutes remain of free practice 3. Getting quite busy out on track. Indeed, everybody is on track, bar Valtteri Bottas in the Sauber. Max Verstappen, you just heard on the radio there, feeling more confident. He's just gone fastest with a 1:32.044 on the medium tyre. Just over a tenth back is his teammate now, Sergio Perez. Then 2.5 tenths further back is Lando Norris. Charles Leclerc 4th and Alex Albon 5th make that 6th, because Oscar Piastri has just gone up into 3rd. So have Red Bull suddenly found a little something? It's still early stages in free practice 3, a very different track to what we will have later on this evening as it continues to rubber in, continues to get faster and faster. Because at a track like this, Track Evolution is massive, as we see Kevin Magnussen negotiate his way over the Anderson Bridge.
Yeah, Track Evolution is huge around here, especially the fact that it rained so heavily last night. We're going to see the cars just getting faster and faster, and then as the air cools, as the track temperature goes down tonight, we're going to see some really quick times on those soft tyres.
We heard so many people on the radio yesterday and already today complaining about cars in their way, traffic management, which we know is always an issue at almost every track we go to, because now the majority of the calendar is almost street circuits. But how do you manage that? If you're on a fast lap, what is the team telling you in your ear? If you're on a slow lap, how are you being informed?
You are being informed, and the engineers are keeping an eye out for traffic, but it's so difficult to police, and it's so difficult for the teams to judge. I mean, there are times out there, you know, when you're in a race car where Sector 3 can feel like, you know, Junction 9 on the M25, where we see Gasly just nearly losing the rear.
That was very, very close.
He's tried to turn in. That's exactly... We've seen that quite a few times actually over the years, where people have lost the rears going into that tight section of turn... No, it wasn't turn 16. That was turn 11.
Yeah.
Turn 11.
After the old Singapore sling.
It's where Bruno Senna and Felipe Massa all those years ago had an amazing duel.
That was a fight, wasn't it?
Amazing duel. But yeah, with 25 minutes gone in the session, Verstappen and Perez seem to have found a bit more pace today on those medium compound tyres. Sit first and second of the session so far. Then in third, Piastri, 4th, George Russell. So Mercedes looking a little bit better in the early phases of this FP3, and then Lando Norris in P5.
This is the sound of Lando Norris heading towards turn 16. This is actually one of that new straight that was made last year. They cut out a couple of corners, and due to some building works going on, so we no longer sort of go underneath one of the grandstands. It's now a long straight with a slight kink at turn 15, about 400 metres. That's the site of a new DRS zone as well. So 4 DRS zones around the Marina Bay circuit now, as Lando Norris completes his lap and goes second fastest, 4 tenths off Max Verstappen. George Russell on the radio.
I need a change of gloves for next stint.
Hey, fun.
A change of gloves for George Russell.
I don't think I've heard that.
You never had to change your gloves mid-session?
No, I've never had to change my gloves mid-session. I did last season need to change my gloves for Shanghai, but that was due to a swollen left hand from a hand operation, so I needed to go up a size on my left hand.
Well, that's fair enough.
I think that's fair enough, but I have no idea. I mean, could that be damp, or could basically, with the temperatures that we're seeing out in Singapore, you know, your hands actually swell and they clam up. Maybe they're just feeling a little bit tight and they're restricting his blood flow to his fingers, maybe?
Well, let's head down to our glove reporter, trackside, Rosanna Tennant, after Verstappen.
Well, I was hoping I was going to be able to say the gloves are off, but it's Lewis Hamilton that's just come in.
Sorry, Rosanna, we just got a team radio. You know what? They're not doing the bleeps for team radio at the moment, so we're not getting a full warning. Verstappen just said something on the radio. I'll have to go back and check what it was.
Sorry.
But that's all right.
Sorry.
That's all right. Back to you anyway. What can you see?
Well, I can see Lewis Hamilton. I sort of ran to the Mercedes garage because I thought, I can see George having his glove changed. But actually, it was Lewis Hamilton that was coming in. He's been wheeled back in. Tyres are still on. Tyre blankets were put round them. The car is still running, so I'm not quite sure what's going on here, actually. He's coming straight back out again. Interesting. Not sure why he would have just popped back into the garage then.
Well, Russell, who was the man who requested the glove change, we're seeing him at the moment as we head on board with him, making his way through turn 12 and across the Anderson Bridge. So the glove's still very much on, and he's pushing, Sam.
He is pushing, but the rear of the car looks a little bit nervous for George Russell at the moment. Whenever he's doing a change of direction, it just looks like he's having to put a little bit of correction into the wheel. As I say that, though, purple in Sector 2 for George Russell. So clearly that Mercedes is working better today than it was yesterday. Interesting to note as well, through turn 16, Oscar Piastri compared to Lando Norris, two completely different lines. Lando leaning on the front tyre a little bit more into 16 and then asking a little bit more from the rear loaded tyre through 17.
As Russell crosses the line and goes second fastest, just under 2/10 between himself and Max Verstappen. 33 minutes and 17 seconds remain. Verstappen fastest ahead of Russell. Sainz is third. Norris, Piastri the top five. Then comes Perez. Leclerc is seventh ahead of Hulkenberg. Hamilton on an outlap now, having come into the pits where Rosanna was, down in ninth. Albon currently rounds out the top 10. Then comes Colapinto just behind him. Tsunoda is 12th. Magnussen, Ricciardo, Alonso is 15th. Stroll, Gasly and Ocon 17th and 18th, and it's the two Saubers at the back. Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas 19th and 20th. And was that just a clout against the wall through turn 16 for Alex Albon in the Williams?
Yeah, that's a really clumsy mistake by Alexander Albon. There was no need for him to hit that inside wall.
So tell you what, he's come through the kink, the slight kink of 15, it must be, where he's gone to the inside, hit the wall with the front left, and that's just, straight away giving him a bit of a puncture. Sparks flying from the underneath of that Williams as he then slows right down on the approach to the braking zone of turn 16. So that is a bit of a silly error.
Really bizarre. Let's hope that hasn't done any damage to his suspension. We know that Williams are up against it with regards to the budget. They've had a lot of heavy crashes this year. And they've brought front suspension upgrades, so let's keep our fingers crossed that hasn't damaged any new components, but certainly a very bizarre crash there for Alexander Albon.
Straight back into the pits though as the team now look at that car. His teammate has been out on track, Franco Colapinto, on the soft tyre. But you know what, Williams have been looking good so far this weekend, so let's see if they can continue that positive momentum. Rosanna.
Well, I just wanted to update you on the Lewis Hamilton situation, because obviously he came into the garage, and normally they don't do that. They just do whatever they're doing outside in the main bit of the pit lane rather than go back into the garage. It was just a front wing adjust, so nothing troubling, I imagine, just a bit more of a setup change, adjusting the balance, and he's on his way again. And I did the motion of what a front wing adjust sort of looks like to their chief mechanic, and he went, yeah, well done you've been doing this a long time, so, I'm here if you need me. F1 teams.
We're now on board with Charles Leclerc as he enters the final sector, and I've got to say, compared to the Red Bull, compared to the Mercedes and even the McLaren, the Ferrari right now for me looks like the most balanced car, as he does indeed go P1 1/10 quicker than Max Verstappen. There doesn't seem to be a hint of oversteer or lack of traction, a little bit like what we've just seen from Lewis Hamilton on board, where the rear of the car is complaining all the way around the circuit.
Charles Leclerc feeling and looking very comfortable out on track. A two-time pole sitter around Singapore, but never standing on the top step of the podium. Unfortunately, we've had to say that a few times about Charles Leclerc when it comes to pole conversions into race wins. Let's see what he could do this weekend. Lewis Hamilton slings his Mercedes into the double left-hander that sees off a lap, goes fourth fastest for the Mercedes, a 1:31.7, 2/10 back from Charles Leclerc. Russell just behind him in fifth. This is the sound of Verstappen as he brakes for turn 7. A little replay we're seeing, and we saw this so many times yesterday. There's the exit curve there, Sam. Can catch a car out massively because it almost pitches you up, and then you have no more grip.
Well, these Formula 1 cars, single seaters, they run so low that curve then sits on the plank. The plank is the floor in the middle of the car, and your tyres are actually no longer connected to the ground. Literally, momentum is taking you forwards. You have no control when you get the middle of the car on that particular curve.
Well, Verstappen living to fight another day on that front, and Red Bull so far displaying some slightly stronger pace. Halfway through the session we go as the track continues to get better and better, and the sun gets lower and lower in the sky. It is actually not that sunny, it's quite cloudy, and George Russell into turn 14 has a moment, has to bail out of the corner, does a nice U-E and makes it back onto the track, but got very close to the left-hand side wall, because you almost peel over slightly to the left before chucking it into the right-hander. Didn't make contact with the wall, back on his way again. So pushing hard out there as we continue to gear up for qualifying later on this afternoon. We'll be on air from 1:55 in the UK on the BBC Sport website and app ahead of a 2 o'clock qualifying session start. Here is George Russell.
Just a lack of front bite from those front tyres. I feel like Mercedes are kind of between a rock and a hard place at the moment with their balance, because you would say, like, well, why not just put more rear brake bias into the car, or had more shift of the brake bias going more to the rear? But they're struggling with the rear as well, Harry. It's not like it's just, we've got understeer and front locking, let's make a change. It's more than that. It's quite complex, and this is why we see them struggling quite a bit. We now go on board with Franco Colapinto, someone that's really impressed me with his first couple of Grand Prix, and he's actually scored points, which is really, really great for his first couple of Grand Prix.
First Argentine driver to score points in a Formula 1 race since Carlos Reutemann in 1982. He's already vindicated the decision within 2 Grand Prix to replace Logan Sargent, who was in that car, as gets a little bit hairy for Colapinto coming out of the exit of 17, round through 18, 19, flat out across the line. He's on the soft tyre, goes 6th fastest for Franco Colapinto. Again, another track, Singapore, that he has never been to. You say you're impressed with him. I think everybody up and down the pit lane is, especially if he continues that momentum. Do you think there's a chance we could see him on the grid somewhere next year?
Now, that's a different question altogether, Harry. I mean, it's I don't see where he fits in.
Well, there's one seat available at Sauber.
Yeah, there is. Let's see what happens. But this is a very tricky track to go to in Formula 1 if you've never done it before. Formula 2, of course, don't go here. In fact, can you remember the last time Formula 2 raced in Singapore?
Now you've put me on the spot there.
I have indeed.
You know what? I want to say it wasn't actually that long ago, but they're definitely not here this weekend.
I can tell you. Do you want to know when it was and who the last ever race winner was?
Was it Sam Bird in GP2?
Oh, well done. Well done. I've wanted to get that fact out there.
Was it 2013?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. I had more hair back then.
Was it blonder? Or
well, I dye mine now. Let's face it. So yeah.
But that's something Baku. Colapinto had never raced at either before in his career. And look, the other thing that I think made it even more notable for Colapinto, because he had a crash in practice. So displaying that mental resilience to come back from that almost sort of highlights what a great result it was for him.
Yeah, he definitely had the car underneath him. The car was looking very strong out there, but he has been a lot closer to Albon than anybody else has been to Albon, to be honest. I mean, Sargent was nowhere near Albon for most of his tenure there at Williams, but Colapinto's been chucked in the deep end, and so far he's done a very solid job. I'm not going to lie, Harry, I'm really excited about the Grand Prix this weekend. The fact that we've got 3 or potentially 4 different cars that could fight for a podium this weekend. Last year we saw one of the most tactical displays that we've ever seen in Formula One around the streets of Singapore, with Carlos Sainz taking a really well-deserved win. The way that he used DRS to his advantage to keep the cars at bay was quite frankly sublime, and that's when we heard the full Ferrari smooth operator, if you remember, from 12 months ago. And the Ferrari is back on form again. We're in the nose cam right now of the Ferrari, and it looks really nicely dialed in. Charles Leclerc currently heading the field with 24.5 minutes to go, from Max Verstappen, Lando Norris in third, and then the Mercedes duo of Hamilton and Russell in fourth and fifth.
Yeah, that's how it's shaping up very nicely indeed, ahead of the fastest laps of the weekend later on in qualifying. Sainz makes his way through the left-hander of 17. It's a short blast, then down, slight touch on the brakes through the double left-hander that closes off the lap of the Marina Bay circuit and pops himself up at the second fastest. Complained a lot yesterday on the radio of brake issues for Carlos Sainz, working his way through that in this session. Less than a tenth of a second between himself and Charles Leclerc. Colapinto, with that soft tyre run, is now 7th fastest, ahead of Ricciardo actually, and Tsunoda is currently down to 13th in the pits. The RB team are one of the dark horses, I think, this weekend, along with Williams. They've both been showing some good form here at the moment, and it is such a tight battle in the midfield. You know, a 10th, a 9th place, or as we saw last time out with Williams, getting those double points finishes, 7th and 8th, when you have a big crash with the top teams. That is literally millions of dollars worth of money for these teams in the midfield. Every weekend is crucial for them.
Every point counts for the smaller teams. Every point counts, no matter where you are, especially how tight it is at the top as well. But for the likes of Williams and RB, a double points finish is absolutely crucial to gain that funding for next season.
I'm just trying to find your Marina Bay win. Oh, here it is. You were first, 2013.
Oh, what a win.
You were. Well done. Do you remember who was second?
Controlled the field. Marcus Ericsson.
Very good. And who was third?
Fabio Lima.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well remembered.
I think Ericsson was about 6 seconds behind at the flag.
Very good. And one of our 5 live colleagues, although he doesn't really turn up anymore, dear old Jolyon Palmer, down in 17th. Not great, but he did win. He did win the sprint race the day before.
No, I won the sprint race.
Oh.
He won the feature.
Oh, the feature race before the sprint race?
Yeah, it was different back then. So I think I won 4 features in a sprint that year, or 3 features in a sprint. I can't remember.
Well, you had 5 wins in total.
Wins, yeah.
Second in the championship.
I know.
That was rough.
I know.
That's tough.
I know. First of the losers.
Whatever happened to Fabio Lima?
He still races.
Does he?
He does still race, yep. Very talented driver. He's very, very quick. Just unfortunately, sometimes in Formula 2 and in these junior formulas, sometimes people just don't get a break when they've done well. We've seen it time and time again. There'll be drivers currently in Formula 2 that are extremely quick and deserve a shot, but just never quite get it. Formula 1 is the most exclusive club in the world. There's more brain surgeons out there than there are Formula 1 racing drivers. It is an extremely exclusive club to be in, to say that you're a Formula 1 racing driver.
Any brain surgeons? Hashtag BBCF1. Let us know how many of there are of you out there, and we can do the comparison. You had a decent lineup in this field. James Collado, Felipe Nasr, Ericsson, Palmer, Alex Rossi was in your year. Mitch Evans, Daniel Abt, some names you still race against today in Formula E.
I do.
You bring up a good point though, as Russell now sticks on the soft tyre and goes fastest in the first sector, about opportunities for young drivers coming into Formula One. And actually it feels like at the moment there seems to be quite a lot, because next year, who have we got? Oliver Behrman is going to Haas, Jack Doohan going to Alpine, Kimi Antonelli, so much furore around him, going to Mercedes. Possibly Gabriel Bortoleto to Sauber, or indeed we've got Franco Colapinto racing it out at the moment, who I think has put himself in contention for that seat, or certainly has put himself at the top of the pile of many people's lists. I'm sure I'm missing out somebody there, but Liam Lawson as well, with rumours ramping up this weekend about possibly this being Daniel Ricciardo's last weekend. There are more and more opportunities at the moment, but you know who I have missed off that list? The Formula 2 champions. Where are they? And why? And why are they not? Why is Teo Porcher, Felipe Drugovich, why are they not getting those opportunities as Russell goes fastest on the soft tyre?
Yeah, Russell goes fastest, and by some way. Those soft tyres working well on that Mercedes, and the jump from soft to medium seems to be absolutely huge around this circuit. But I don't think it's a tyre that you can really lean on for multiple laps. We see a bit of traffic there for Alexander Albon. He's also on the soft tyre, doing his run a little bit later than Franco Colapinto. He's now entering the final sector, swings it through the final corner, and goes up to second place, basically 1 second down from George Russell. So Russell's put down a bit of a marker there, I'd say, compared to everybody else. Oscar Piastri on the soft tyre goes up to second.
Well, 19 minutes and 11 seconds left to go of free practice 3, and indeed some soft tyre running being done at the moment. I want to come back because you dodged my question.
Yeah, sorry, I completely dodged your topic. Honestly,
I know you don't know,
I think that
but can you speculate?
Well, look, the press and the media build up certain people that they fancy, that they like, and then those people get looked at. And there's only 20 seats out there. So it's very difficult for everybody to get a fair crack at the whip. Now, some people, when they get fancied, and certain, there's team bosses there that have an investment in these drivers. So placing yourself at the right place at the right time is very tricky.
It certainly is, and at the moment though we still have a couple of seats up for grabs, as I said. That second Sauber seat up for grabs. Valtteri Bottas hoping to get it, but more and more as the weeks go by, it does look like it's going to Gabriel Bortoleto perhaps, but still up for grabs, and Franco Colapinto putting himself into the frame. Liam Lawson as well being speculated, so I think we'll have news possibly next week about the future of Daniel Ricciardo as he makes his way around. Oscar Piastri just finding that curb on the exit of turn 7, which a couple of drivers have found, just losing the rear slightly. But at the moment, George Russell fastest out on track. The top 4 all running that soft tyre. Piastri second, Hamilton third, Albon fourth, Rosanna Tennant.
I'm not fifth, though, just to be clear. Yeah, we're getting a bit of an idea of the pecking order now for qualifying, aren't we, with those soft shod running. Sam, I was there in 2013. Yeah, I was, in Singapore.
Well, there,
that was my first Singapore.
Were you in awe of the dominance in the sprint race in GP2?
Do you know what? I was in awe of the dominance in the sprint for you, in the feature for Jolyon Palmer, and I thought, do you know what? In just over a decade's time, I reckon I might be on the same team sheet as those gentlemen. Oh, we may well be on the BBC airwaves together.
I mean, yeah. Incredible, right? Interestingly, Rosanna, speaking about tyres, as George Russell said last weekend, looks like Mercedes are going for a double cool, and I think that's because it's so hot out in Singapore, and there's so much humidity as well. It's very difficult to get a proper cool down lap on these soft compound tyres. He wants to bring the surface temp down as much as possible and also the core temperature down as much as possible before he goes again on another push.
What was the better win for you? Just going back to that glory days of 2013, Singapore 2013, or Sao Paulo 2024, and that is a question relayed from Andrew Benson.
Oh, I think Sao Paulo 2024, world-class opponents in Formula E. It's not a sprint race. It's a proper race. Not that a sprint race isn't a proper race, but and first win for McLaren. That was great. I thought you were going to say was Monaco or Singapore, and it would have been Monaco, but definitely Brazil.
And that was your 2013. That was your final year in GP2, second, and then you moved on to bigger and better things.
I moved on to other things, absolutely. As we see Colapinto on another lap and he goes up to 5th place ahead of Albon on the soft tyre.
8/10 the gap between Colapinto and Russell, 9/10 between Albon and Russell. Colapinto again showing well. Of course, it's practice, so we always don't know quite where the levels are at, but at the moment I think this is positive for Williams. They're having a good run right now. Lando Norris making his way through turn 12 across the Anderson Bridge.
I'm very surprised more people are on the soft already.
Yeah, Max is out there now. He's just done a 30.5.
That was Russell saying he's very surprised people aren't on the soft tyre, or that more people aren't on the soft tyre already. Lando Norris is, and is going quick through the first sector, fastest of anybody. Through the middle sector, fastest of anybody. Arcs his way through the left-hand kink of 15 before you run down this new DRS zone into the braking zone of 17. Arcs his way right, then left. Then it's just a short squirt on the throttle before you chuck your car into the final 2 corners. The double left-hander that see off the lap, and it's fastest by almost half a second, a 1:29.646 for Lando Norris.
Car looks very comfortable on the curbs, doesn't it, Harry? Being able to ride curbs, carry minimum speeds. When he picks up the power, the rear is there for him. It's something that we haven't necessarily seen from some of the other teams.
Just, under 15 minutes remain then. It's Norris, Russell, Piastri, Verstappen, Hamilton 5th, and it's the 2 Williams of Colapinto and Albon. Leclerc and Sainz currently 8th and 9th. Haven't seen the soft running from them yet. Ricciardo is 10th ahead of Perez. Magnussen's 12th. Alonso, Hulkenberg, Tsunoda is down in 15th. Then comes, and Tsunoda's actually just got out on the soft, so we'll see what the RB man has got. Stroll 16th, Bottas 17th, Gasly Ocon, and Zhou Guanyu, the last 3 runners in the 20-strong field. Roseanne.
Just saying that they are mightily speedy this weekend, aren't they? We went faster than the pole time for 2023 yesterday. Lando Norris going faster in FP2 yesterday, and we are way ahead of that now as well. I'll tell you, the pole time last year was 1:30.984. So, yeah, we are leagues ahead, 1:29.6, aren't we, with Norris this time? And I just have to say, Sam, do you hate talking about your career? Because every time Harry or I ask you a question, you are very good at going, oh, hang on, let's just talk about the tyres so-and-so's running, or let me draw your attention to Colapinto.
Well, our listeners,
they care about Sam Burke.
They have tuned in to listen about FP3 from Singapore, not us waffling.
Hashtag BBC F1, there's one way to sort this out.
About my heroics from 10 years ago, let's face it. So, yeah, let's concentrate on Fernando Alonso now as he exits the final corner to go P7 on his soft tyre run.
You say that, someone has messaged you, Sam. Owen,
no.
Hashtag BBC F1.
Owen, bless you.
Question for Sam. Where
dear.
do Formula E teams look when they want to bring in new drivers? They want to know about you, your career, your team.
That is an interesting,
Are you saying none of my questions have been interesting?
Well, no, let's face it, they're not.
Do you want another run out and 5-5? I'll
speak to the producer, not you. Thank you very much. Formula E, it's not that they pick the people that haven't quite made it in Formula 1, but it's a little bit like that. You look at all of us drivers in Formula E, we've all had sniffs and opportunities in Formula 1 or been in Formula 1, and the likes of Drogovic and Pourchaire and these kind of drivers, they are looked at for Formula E. Now, as we've just seen a yellow flag in sectors 1 and 2 of the circuit. I wonder what that is. Can we see anybody moving slow? Green flag, so track is clear. Maybe we'll get a replay of what happened. Those are the kind of drivers that get looked at for Formula E.
Oh, you're almost seeing those who get to the top spots in Formula 2. They're seeing that as their option. Not, even Formula 1, as you said, there's only 20 seats. I mean, you've got one of your, I think your teammate next year is
Taylor Barnard. Extremely quick, young man, gun. Extremely quick. I'm old enough to be his dad, which is shocking in itself.
But you've got people like in the field, Dan Ticktum, who we always saw in Formula 2, didn't quite get the Formula 1 outing, but was fast.
Everybody is a race winner in Formula 2 or in a World Championship series out there. You look at Nick de Vries. Nick de Vries was given a chance in Formula 1. Okay, it didn't work out, but he was given a chance in Formula 1 based on his performances as reserve driver for Mercedes, and also the fact that he was a Formula E World Champion. So Formula E is a place where drivers can have a home, have a successful career in motorsport, and also it is looked at. It really is looked at.
There was talk, just lastly on this, for the last 10 minutes, then we'll come back to the track action. There was talk, I think it's now got a bit quiet, about after the post-season Abu Dhabi test, a potential sprint race with just rookie drivers. I would be all for that.
I would love to see this. I think that Formula 1 giving more opportunities than they already do to young drivers is a great thing, because these people that aren't spoken about quite as much, giving them an opportunity and seeing how they fare against the more favoured drivers in the press, I think would be a great thing.
Yeah, I think it has got a bit quiet, sadly, on that front. But again, all we want to see is opportunities for people. So when they get the chance to perform, it's brilliant to see the likes of Colapinto doing so well out on the circuit. Right, okay, we're into the last 10 minutes now of free practice 3. We've seen what Lando Norris has got on the softs, along too with his teammate and George Russell. Carlos Sainz comes across the line, 5th fastest for Sainz, 1.1 seconds off of Norris. Leclerc is coming out now. Indeed, he's on the track at the moment, so we'll see what Charles Leclerc has got. And I think the reason for that yellow flag we saw a few moments ago was for George Russell once again having to take to the escape road, this time down at turn 7.
He's practicing his semi-donuts at the moment. Those front tyres are just not biting again. He's asking a lot from the fronts.
Everything all right?
Yeah. Well, no, I went straight on, but otherwise I'm okay.
That's quite a good radio message from George Russell. But those, I feel like he's definitely struggling with the end of braking, the ability to get that last bit of retardation through the car into the tyre and get it to turn.
Lewis Hamilton stamps on the brakes as he heads down to turn 1. Let's see what the 7-time champion has got on his soft tyre run. Arcs his way out through turn 3 on the throttle, up through the gears, before you then make your way slightly downhill, braking towards turn 4, sling it into the right-hander before you get a dose of DRS, the drag reduction system. The rear wing flap opens at the press of a button. Indeed, the straight, not even a full straight. You arc slightly to the right before you slam on the brakes for turn 7. That's where his teammate went wide and had to do a pirouette a few moments ago. Hamilton makes it safely through, but he's down on time compared to Norris through the first sector. Indeed, Hamilton's first sector is a 27.167, so needs to find a little bit more time. Leclerc, personal best through sector 1 at the moment.
Just again, that Mercedes just doesn't look that compliant over any kind of bumps. The rear is a little bit unhappy, complaining on traction, but then the front doesn't look like it wants to bite in the slow speed corners either.
Well, as they make their way down, Hamilton makes his way down the straight, finds a bit of time in the middle sector up on himself, but still 1.1 seconds adrift from Lando Norris, so it's falling away for Lewis Hamilton outside of Mercedes in the pits. Rosanna, what have you got for us?
Well, we weren't expecting that. George Russell just suddenly came into the pits, and Mercedes weren't expecting that either. The mechanics having to run around and find the tyre blankets, and in he came. The guy said we weren't expecting that. So we had guys running with leaf blowers coming out to cool the car down, and he's now been brought back into his garage, and the tyres have come off. The mechanics are now getting them ready. But yeah, that was all a bit confusing, I think, for Mercedes. But he's in. Maybe it was that little off-track excursion. Maybe he just wanted to come in and check a few things over.
Yeah, potentially in these last, six or so minutes. Leclerc comes across the line, 5th fastest for Charles Leclerc, about 9/10 off. I think he had to abort his first flying run, so that was his second run, setting off again this time. Where are we in terms of temperature? Air temperature 30 degrees, track temperature 35 degrees as well. Gasly slots his Alpine up into 14th, as we'll see what Sergio Perez has got in his Red Bulls. He sticks on the soft tyre. You know, Sam, it was so nice to see Perez have a good run of form in Baku. I know he's a bit of a maestro around there for some reason. It works so well, and up until the penultimate lap it was all going so well for him. But do you think we're seeing, well, it's hard to gauge, has Perez always been still on form, and has the car actually been steadily making its way backwards, and only now they're seeing it because Verstappen's being affected too?
Well, the Red Bull car is designed effectively for Max Verstappen's driving style. So if you don't have Max Verstappen's driving style, you're going to struggle. Perez prefers a slightly kind of more understeery car. Max's is extremely direct and darts around a lot more. So I think Sergio Perez is not able to extract the pace that Max has been over the last 2-3 years. Leclerc radio?
Yeah, let's focus on driving instead of focusing about scrub and whatsoever. And to be honest, about feeling also, because the feeling is we are very slow.
Okay, so Charles Leclerc saying that he's very slow, and let's focus on the pace and not other aspects of the driving. But going back to Sergio Perez, he is going to go quicker than his current place right now in 19th. But yeah, he looks like he's closer to Verstappen. Well, not on that lap.
He lost a lot of time in that final sector.
Yeah, I think he's more comfortable with where the car is at now in comparison to Max, because the car isn't dialed in. I think that's all that we're seeing right now. Max isn't happy, therefore Max isn't able to extract the pace out of it that we're used to seeing. And that's where it's at. I don't think necessarily that Sergio Perez is driving miles better than before. It's just Max isn't as happy.
Well, Perez then left looking for time in that final sector, only enough to go 15th fastest. Teammate Verstappen is up there in the top 4. From Daniel, hashtag BBCF1, if Sam Bird and Harry don't think we hashtag BBCF1 listeners are here for the waffle, they're mistaken.
I just have no break.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad we're here all weekend.
As Leclerc says,
so, yeah.
He has no grip coming into the pits. He's up on his teammate though, at least.
He is, but you know, considering where Ferrari were yesterday with the pace that they showed, I'm surprised that they are struggling this much in comparison to McLaren, who seem to have the upper hand, especially Lando Norris up there, the best part of half a second quicker than everybody with 3 minutes and 45 seconds to go. Max Verstappen is giving it another go on the soft compound tyre, finishing sector 1 in a few seconds time. Where's this sector going to put him? And he is 4.5 tenths down on Lando Norris. So clearly those soft tyres do not last that long, and he runs wide over that curb that we've seen a couple of times already from some of the drivers this session.
Yeah, we saw this yesterday. A couple of the drivers trying to see how long they could make the soft tyre last, whether they could do a quick lap, then ease off, then go for another push. But it does feel like it is that one lap tyre.
Well, especially this time of day. Now, we might see it in Q1 where people can do multiple laps to try and get them through. As the track conditions cool down, you tend to find that tyres last just that little bit longer, but it is a stretch around this circuit.
And then Verstappen through the middle sector, a second down. So we'll keep a track of his lap and see where he ends up. Just on the fringes of the top 10, Alonso is 10th ahead of Tsunoda. 2 Haas cars, 12th and 13th. Hulkenberg ahead of Magnussen. We haven't really spoken much about Kevin Magnussen so far. Just worth reiterating that he is back after his one race ban where he missed Baku for Oliver Behrman. So Magnussen back in the car till the end of the season with a clean licence to boot as well. And we expect him to see out these last 7 races and perhaps that to be the swan song to his Formula One career. So Magnussen then hoping for a good run round here. Verstappen crossing the line, 4th fastest, but again the exit curb at turn 7, catching the Dutchman out and almost riding it like a skateboard. The sparks flying from the underside of the Red Bull. as he carries on his way.
Yeah, that's the second time we've seen him do that this session. But he will be slightly encouraged, I suppose, that his Sector 3 then was a green sector. A green sector means that that's his quickest of the session so far. Purple means that you're the quickest of everybody in that particular session. He's done a green sector, Sector 3, so he might be thinking, well, I'm P4 at the moment, but I've done a green sector on a slower lap, so therefore I'm probably second or third quickest in between second and third. So, and that's an improvement obviously from fourth. He hasn't put his theoretical best lap time together. So there's a little bit of hope there, but certainly the McLaren of Lando Norris is a little bit out of reach right now for the Red Bull.
1 minute to go, just over that. Last bit of waffle for you, Sam, because for qualifying we have to obviously get a bit more serious. And this is from our friend Amit. I always enjoy hearing from Sam. I'd like to know what he thinks a Formula E car would be like around this circuit.
I think it'd be great fun. So if the Formula E organisers are listening, and they should be, then yes, we would love to race in Singapore. You know, we do go to some amazing locations. This is an iconic track. The problem is that then we get compared to Formula One. Now, of course, Formula One would be a lot faster, and then we'd get knocked for it and say that, you know, Formula E cars are no good, and they are good. You know, we showcase a different form of technology. But yes, I would love to race around Singapore again.
It would look mega.
It would look great at night. At night, it would look superb.
Charles Leclerc through the left-hander of turn 10, used to be the old Singapore sling, got rid of that corner a few years ago, then over the Anderson Bridge, where, as you brought up earlier, if you remember back to 2012, fantastic wheel-to-wheel battle between Felipe Massa in the Ferrari and Bruno Senna in the Williams. Massa almost sideways in the Ferrari as he's controlling it and still managed to make the move on Senna. Not quite the case in practice for Charles Leclerc on his own out there. Carlos Sainz also going again on the soft tyre. Personal best for Leclerc through Sector 1, down on time in the middle sector as he makes his way into the braking zone of the right-hander of 16, which arcs around through to the left-hander. Slightly loose on the rear though for Leclerc coming out there. Yeah, slow speed oversteer for Leclerc, and he's slowed right down across the finish line to not actually do a lap time, but encouraging Sector 1, but then the tyres were complaining too much by the time he got to Sector 2. That is an issue here, is that the surface of the tyre, especially those rears, just complaining on that second lap, not being able to extract a lap time. We're seeing Carlos Sainz now finishing it and completing his lap time, but not improving and staying in 6th place. And takes the checkered flag, as well as the more and more lights are beginning to come on around this Marina Bay circuit. Just over 4.9 kilometers, 3 miles of track with 12 turns to the left, 7 to the right. And next time we see these cars, well, the sun will have set, darkness will consume, and the track will be illuminated as we will set the fastest laps of the weekend to go qualifying ahead of the Singapore Grand Prix and to set the grid to find out who will be on pole position. And right now you have to say it's looking like it's going the way of Lando Norris in the McLaren, who ends the session fastest with a 1:29.646. George Russell, though, pushing hard and finding the runoff quite a few times in this session. Second for Mercedes, 4 tenths down. Piastri third ahead of Verstappen. Charles Leclerc in 5th ahead of his teammate Sainz. Then it's Hamilton, Albon and Colapinto, both Williams drivers up in the top 9, with Alonso rounding out the top 10. Tsunoda is 11th ahead of the 2 Haas cars of Hülkenberg and Magnussen. Gasly 14th, Perez 15th, Ocon 16th ahead of Ricciardo. Then comes Stroll with Bottas and Zhou 19th and 20th for Sauber. Rosanna.
Thank you very much, Harry. I'm just watching the mechanics from Mercedes and the mechanics from Aston Martin head up to pit in. Their driver's obviously been called to the weighbridge, so they're off to do that. You can hear the cars on the start-finish straight, about to practice some race starts. And I'm just watching Mick Schumacher actually cross the fast lane of the pit lane, heading over to have a little look for himself. Of course, still very much with the Mercedes team at the moment. And I looked into Mercedes' garage just then and gave Toto Wolff a thumbs up. He thought I think he thought I wanted him to come and do an interview, but then I said, no, look at the timings, and he gave a double thumbs up. So, yeah, what are we making of that? Mercedes looking a little bit stronger with George Russell right up there, but you were a bit confused coming into this session, Harry. Are you a little less confused confused now?
Well, I'm always confused, Rosanna, so we can never be too
Dazed
sure on
and
that
confused.
occasion. Dazed and confused. No, I think that is impressive for Russell particularly. Look, they were experimenting with setup issues. He's clearly pushing out there. But remember, Russell went well here last year too, so he does like it round Singapore. I think Ferrari will be left with their heads being scratched slightly. I think there's more to come in Ferrari. I think they won't be happy to be down in 5th and 6th behind Verstappen. So I just wonder if the picture might change for Ferrari going into qualifying. I don't think we've quite seen their full potential in this session.
And what about you, Sam? You always get a little bit excited when the McLarens are right up at the front. It looks like they are the ones to beat now, because when we came into this weekend, everyone was saying Ferrari, as Harry said. Maybe we haven't seen what they've got entirely, but you must be feeling fairly confident as a McLaren driver.
I am feeling confident, but I think it's going to be an awful lot closer when we get to qualifying later on.
And of course, it's still light at the moment. The sun sets here at just after 7 o'clock. So it's going to be darker. It's going to be maybe a touch cooler. So, Sam, what they've learned in that session, still useful, but obviously qualifying will be different right from the off in that first part of it.
Absolutely. We'll see that the rear tyre is able to hang on a little bit longer, maybe a little bit more understeer in some of these cars as the lights come on and the track gets a little bit cooler. The cars will be lighter. We're going to see some really fast lap times in a few hours' time.
Okay, I'm going to push you guys then. Harry, who have you got on pole position this evening?
Lando Norris, pole. Sam?
Okay, Sam.
I'm going to have to agree. I think Lando Norris for pole.
What about you, Rosanna?
Right. Well, I'm going to say Lando Norris as well, but I kind of, not that I don't wish pole on Norris, but I hope we have a really tight fight for that front spot of the grid for tomorrow's Singapore Grand Prix, and I think it is looking like it could be a tight fight for pole this evening. Lando Norris fastest, then ahead of George Russell and Oscar Piastri in FP3. Do join us for qualifying later on. Sam Bird, Harry Benjamin, thank you so much for talking us through that third and final practice session. We'll be live at 5 to 9 on the BBC Sport website for qualifying to set the grid for the Singapore Grand Prix. Do join us then. This has been a lively production for BBC Radio 5 Live.